The fluorescent lights above hummed faintly as I lay in the stark white hospital room, cradling my newborn daughter against my chest. My body ached with exhaustion, every muscle trembling from the long and grueling hours of labor. But despite the pain, my heart was full, overwhelmed with a fragile joy as I stared into her tiny face. Her soft whimpers and warm little body against mine felt like a miracle. I expected that any second now, the door would open and my husband would walk in. He had promised to be there. He had sworn he wouldn't miss this moment for the world. Throughout my pregnancy, I clung to that image. The man I had loved for years standing beside me, taking my hand as we welcomed our child into the world. But instead, the door creaked open with an eerie slowness, and in he walked smiling. Yes, but not alone. His hand was intertwined with another woman's, a woman I had never seen before, her hair perfectly styled, her eyes cold but gleaming with a smugness that pierced through my already fragile state. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating from the medication or sheer exhaustion. My mind refused to process what my eyes were seeing. My husband, standing there in my hospital room, holding the hand of another woman as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Darling," he said casually, his tone almost rehearsed. "This is Anna. She's the woman I truly love." The words hit harder than any labor pain. My breath caught in my throat, and the room suddenly felt colder, darker, suffocating. I looked down at my daughter, at the proof of our life together, and then back at him. My husband, the man who was supposed to be my anchor, was instead tearing the ground out from under me. Gasps rippled through the nurses and hospital staff. I could feel their eyes burning into me, pity and shock mixing into whispers I couldn't fully hear. My cheeks burned with humiliation. I wanted to scream, to demand he leave, but my voice trembled too much to form words. Anna smirked, her perfectly manicured hand resting on his arm like she had just claimed a prize. Her gaze flicked down to the baby, and she tilted her head with a false sweetness. "She's beautiful," she said, as though mocking me, as though she were already stepping into a role that wasn't hers. Tears blurred my vision, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. I wouldn't let them see me broken. I clenched my jaw, forcing strength I didn't feel into my trembling body. "Why?" I finally managed to whisper, my voice hoarse. "Why here? Why now?" His expression hardened, as if he were the one burdened by my question. "Because the truth can't wait anymore," he replied coldly. "I don't want to pretend. I don't want to live a lie." I stared at him, my chest heaving, unable to believe the cruelty of it all. He had chosen this moment me most vulnerable, fragile moment to shatter everything. The timing was no accident. This was deliberate, a message, a public declaration that I was no longer wanted. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. The staff shuffled awkwardly, unsure whether to intervene or slip away. I could hear the faint sound of another baby crying in a distant room, but in mine, all I could hear was the thunderous pounding of my heart and the echo of his betrayal. Anna leaned closer to him, whispering something I couldn't hear, and he nodded, his eyes avoiding mine now. That avoidance stung more than his words. It was confirmation that he had already moved on, already built a new life in his head where Ian, our baby, were outsiders. My hands shook as I clutched my daughter closer, instinctively shielding her from this ugliness, from the sight of her father's betrayal. I knew even then that this moment would be burned into me forever. The humiliation, the disbelief, the suffocating ache of betrayal, it was too much to process all at once. But beneath all that pain, a spark of anger flickered to life. He had stripped me of dignity in front of strangers. He had tried to make me small, powerless, and discarded. But as I looked down at my daughter, at her innocent face resting against me, I felt something shift inside. I didn't know yet how I would fight back, or what the future would look like. But I knew this. I would not let this moment define me as the broken woman he wanted me to be. And deep in the shadows of my pain, I could feel that this was only the beginning of a story much darker, much more twisted than I could have imagined. The minutes that followed felt like an eternity stretched thin across my chest, each second heavier than the last. I was still clutching my newborn to my chest, her tiny breaths grounding me as I stared at the scene unfolding before me. My husband was, standing in the middle of my hospital room with his mistress, as if it were some kind of twisted stage. The nurses exchanged uneasy glances, their hands fidgeting with clipboards and charts. I could sense their discomfort, their pity, and it only magnified my humiliation. Whispers began to ripple through the staff. I wasn't just a patient anyway, I was a spectacle. A woman betrayed, humiliated, abandoned at the very moment I was supposed to be celebrated. "Please," I whispered to him, my voice shaking, almost pleading. "Not here, not like this. Can't you see what this is doing to me?" But instead of compassion, his face hardened, his jaw set as though my pain was an inconvenience. "You don't understand," he said flatly. "I had to tell you the truth. It's better this way." Anna tightened her grip on his hand, her lips curling into a faint smile. "We're not trying to hurt you," she said, though her tone betrayed her. "It's just time for everyone to live honestly." Honesty? The word stabbed me. There was nothing honest about sneaking around behind my back, nothing honest about choosing this moment, me most vulnerable moment, to drop such a bomb. This wasn't honesty. This was cruelty dressed up in righteousness. A nurse finally stepped forward, her expression firm yet sympathetic. "Sir, maybe this isn't the right place for this conversation," she suggested gently, glancing at me protectively. But he waved her off, as if he had every right to turn my hospital room into his stage. "No," he said firmly, "this is the perfect place. This is the truth, and it needed to be said." Tears burned at the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I felt the walls closing in, the sterile air pressing down on me. My newborn stirred in my arms, her tiny face scrunching as if she, too, could sense the chaos swirling around her. I kissed her forehead, whispering softly to calm her, but I was really trying to calm myself. From the hallway, I could hear footsteps, family members arriving. My mother entered first, her expression bright and eager, ready to celebrate her new grandchild. But the moment her eyes fell on the seen-me husband with Anna, her joy turned to confusion and then to fury. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice trembling with outrage. "What in God's name is this?" My husband had the audacity to look annoyed. "Mom, please, don't make a scene. Don't make a scene," she nearly shrieked. "You've humiliated your wife in front of strangers, and you bring Hershey jabbed a finger toward and into the room where your wife just gave birth to your child? And you dare tell me not to make a scene?" Anna smirked, as if she relished the attention, as if she thrived on the chaos. "He doesn't love her anymore," she said simply, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. I thought my mother might strike her, but instead she turned to me, her face softening with sorrow as she touched my arm. "Sweetheart, you don't have to endure this. You don't have to sit here and let them do this to you." But I did endure it. I sat there, pale and trembling, trapped in my hospital bed, holding my baby while the man who had vowed to protect me ripped my dignity to shreds. I wanted to vanish, to sink into the floor, to disappear from all the staring eyes. Then came the whispers from the family. My sister-in-law, standing near the door, crossed her arms and muttered, "Maybe he just fell out of love. It happens." Her words stung almost as much as his betrayal. Instead of support, I felt judgment. Instead of protection, I felt exposed. The room had become a battlefield. My mother shouting, Anna smirking, my husband stone-faced, and me caught in the center, bleeding invisibly from wounds no one could see. Finally, I gathered every ounce of strength I had and said, in a voice louder than I expected, "Get out, both of you. Leave my room. Leave me and my daughter alone." The silence that followed was suffocating. My husband looked at me with something almost like contempt, then exchanged a glance with Anna. She tugged at his arm as if to pull him toward the door, but he lingered, his eyes cold and unrecognizable. "You'll see," he muttered finally. "You'll understand." And then they left, their footsteps echoing down the hallway, leaving behind a trail of whispers and stares that would haunt me long after. I sank back against the pillows, finally letting the tears spill down my face as my mother wrapped her arms around me. "You are not alone," she whispered fiercely. "We'll get through this, I promise." But even as she held me, I knew that the damage was already done. My world had shifted, shattered, and no amount of comfort could piece it back together. And somewhere deep inside, I could sense that this humiliation, the whispers, the betrayal, the smirks was only the beginning of a much darker unraveling of my life. The hospital room was quieter after they left, but the silence was not peaceful. It was heavy, suffocating, like the echo of a storm that had only just passed but left destruction in its wake. My mother sat beside me, holding my hand tightly, her face etched with anger and worry. I could hear the murmurs outside my door, the footsteps of curious nurses and visitors slowing down as they passed, eager to catch a glimpse of the woman whose husband had dragged his mistress into the maternity ward. It didn't take long for the whispers to spread. Hospitals were places of healing, but they were also breeding grounds for gossip. By the next morning, even the cleaning staff seemed to know. The sympathetic glances, the hushed tones when I walked past, the sudden pauses in conversations whenever I entered the corridor, it was unbearable. But the humiliation wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the uncertainty gnawing at me. How long had it been going on? How deep was his betrayal? And why did Anna, the mistress, look at me with that smug confidence as if she held more power over my life than even I did? Late that night, while my daughter slept peacefully in her tiny bassinet, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. My heart pounded as I opened it. A video began to play. My husband's voice, unmistakable, filled the room. "I promise you, Anna, once the baby is born, everything will change. You're the woman I truly love. You're the one I want to spend my life with. She'll understand eventually." My hand shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. The camera angle suggested Anna had been the one recording. She had captured him willingly, confessing his betrayal with a tenderness he hadn't shown me in months. But why send it to me? To hurt me further? To gloat? Or to trap him in her own web? I replayed the clip again and again, each word carving deeper into me. He had been planning this, not just for days or weeks, but perhaps for months. The affection he'd shown me, the reassurances, the way he held my hand through the pregnancy, it was all an act. A performance, while his real heart belonged to someone else. The next morning, I confronted my mother with the video. Her face paled as she listened. This is damning," she whispered. "If this ever got out, his reputation would be ruined. I hadn't even considered that yet." My husband wasn't just any man, was respected in our community. A businessman with a carefully curated image of integrity and loyalty. But in that video, all of it crumbled. And if Anna was capable of recording him once, what else might she have? The days in the hospital dragged on, but I could feel something shifting. My husband visited once, without Anna this time, but the air between us was toxic. He stood by the door, barely looking at me or our daughter. "You'll come home soon," he said coldly. "We'll sort this out." I wanted to scream, to throw the video in his face, to demand answers, but something in me stopped. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the realization that Anna wasn't just his mistress, she was playing her own game, one that even he might not fully understand. When I was finally discharged and returned home, the house felt alien. The nursery we had decorated together mocked me with its cheerful colors. His clothes in the closet, his shoes by the door, it all felt like the possessions of a stranger. That night, as I rocked my baby to sleep, another message came. This time it wasn't just a video, it was a series of them. Each clip was worse than the last me husband whispering sweet promises to Anna, swearing he would leave me, swearing our child wasn't enough to keep him tied down. But then came the twist I didn't expect. In one of the recordings, Anna's voice was sharp, demanding, "If you don't do what you promised, I'll make sure everyone knows. Everyone. Your wife, your family, your business partners. Do you understand?" My blood ran cold. This wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't just lust. This was blackmail. For the first time, I realized that Anna's smug smile in the hospital hadn't been about love it, had been about control. She wasn't just holding my husband's heart. She was holding his future in the palm of her hand. And whether I liked it or not, I was caught in the middle of a game far darker than I had imagined. I sat in the dark, my baby's soft breaths filling the silence as a chilling truth settled over me. Anna wasn't just his mistress, she was his enemy, and soon she might become mine too. The videos haunted me. I couldn't unhear the way he whispered to her, couldn't erase the image of his face softened with affection, the kind of tenderness I had begged for during my pregnancy but never fully received. And now, with each recording that Anna released to me in carefully timed intervals, it felt as though she was peeling away the thin layers of my reality, exposing something rotten at its core. It was no longer just about betrayal. It was about power. 2 nights after coming home from the hospital, my husband returned late. His tie was loose, his face pale, and his hands trembled when he poured himself a glass of whiskey. I sat across from him at the dining table, rocking our baby's bassinet gently with my foot. The silence between us was a chasm. Finally, I broke it. "I've seen the videos." He froze, the glass halfway to his lips. For a moment, his mask slipped, and the panic in his eyes was unmistakable. Then, just as quickly, he tried to recover. "She's lying. She's manipulating you. You can't believe her." "Her? Or you?" I asked, my voice trembling, because from what I saw, you were the one promising her everything. You were the one who said you loved her. You were the one who brought her into my hospital room while I was holding our child. His jaw tightened, and he set the glass down with a sharp thud. "You don't understand. She's dangerous. She's using those recordings to trap me. If they get out, I'll lose everything. My company, my reputation, my life's work. Don't you see? She's blackmailing me. And I'm supposed to pity you?" I spat. "You gave her the weapon. You loaded the gun and handed it to her yourself. Now you expect me to suffer in silence while she destroys us?" He rubbed his forehead, pacing the room like a man cornered. "I made a mistake, but you need to help me fix it. If you love me, if you care about this family, you'll stay quiet. You won't let anyone know." I laughed bitterly. The sound startled even me. "If I love you, you brought your mistress to my hospital bed. You let her stand over me while I was weak, humiliated, bleeding, and holding your child. And now you want my loyalty?" His eyes darkened, and for the first time, I saw something almost cruel in his expression. "You think you're the victim here? She's using you just as much as she's using me." Don't fall into her trap. But what he didn't know was that I had already begun to suspect something deeper. Anna wasn't content with being a mistress. She wanted destruction. She wanted to take everything my marriage, my stability, my dignity, and grind it into dust. The following morning, another message arrived. This time, it wasn't just a video. It was a text. He says he loves me, but the world deserves to hear it too. How should I share it? Instagram, Facebook, or maybe I'll just send it to his business partners directly. I felt my stomach drop. She wasn't bluffing. She was escalating. I rushed to confront my husband, shoving the phone in his face. His expression twisted into rage, not at Anna, but at me. You shouldn't engage with her. Don't respond. Don't feed into her games. She's already winning, I cried. She's dangling you by a string, and you're letting her. Don't you see what she's doing? But deep down, I could see the truth written all over him. He wasn't just terrified of losing his company, he was terrified of being exposed for what he truly was, a liar, a cheater, a man who had betrayed the very person who had stood by him through everything. The pressure began to suffocate me. The house felt haunted by secrets I didn't ask to inherit. Every corner seemed to whisper his betrayal. Every night, when I closed my eyes, I saw Anna's smile and that smug look, as if she were already living the life that should have been mine. Then, one afternoon, as I was feeding the baby in the nursery, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered, "Do you like the videos?" Anna's voice was smooth, mocking. My throat went dry. "Why are you doing this?" "Because he promised me everything," she said simply, "and now he's too much of a coward to give it to me. So maybe I'll just take it myself, piece by piece, starting with you." Her words chilled me. It wasn't about love. It was about power, and she was intoxicated by it. That night, as I watched my husband pacing in the living room, muttering about business deals and ruined reputations, I realized something terrible. I couldn't trust him, and I couldn't reason with her. I was trapped between a liar and a predator, and as Anna tightened her grip, I began to wonder which one of them would destroy me first. The storm broke on a Sunday morning. I was in the kitchen, rocking the baby's carrier with one hand while stirring a pot of oatmeal with the other, when my phone buzzed violently on the counter. Dozens of notifications filled the screen, one after another, friends, acquaintances, even distant relatives texting, "Are you okay? Did you see this? I can't believe it's true." My heart pounded as I clicked on the first link, and there it was Anna's victory. She had finally unleashed the recordings. On Instagram, her profile was filled with carefully edited clips, my husband whispering promises in hotel rooms, calling her his real love, vowing to leave me once the baby was born, saying things like, "You deserve everything she has, and I'll make sure you get it." His voice was clear, his face visible, his betrayal undeniable. The captions were venomous. For years he lied to both of us. Now the truth is out. Number betrayed, number true love wins. Within hours, the videos went viral. Hundreds of strangers flooded the comments sections. some attacking me, calling me blind and pathetic, while others turned on him, branding him a monster who abandoned his wife on her hospital bed. I felt exposed, raw, as if my private humiliation had been dragged into the center of a crowded stage for the world to mock. My phone kept buzzing, the heat of it almost burning my skin, until I couldn't take it anymore. I hurled it across the room, and it cracked against the wall. When my husband came home that afternoon, his face was ashen, sweat staining the collar of his shirt. "It's everywhere," he muttered, collapsing onto the couch. "The board has seen it. My investors. My clients. Everyone knows." "Good," I said coldly, standing in the doorway with the baby in my arms. "Now they can see who you really are." His eyes snapped up to mine, desperate, pleading. "Don't do this. You have to stand by me. Tell them it's fake, that she's lying, that it was all taken out of context. If you don't, I'll lose everything." "Lose everything?" I repeated bitterly. "You already lost me. And you've lost your child's respect before he's even old enough to understand. What more do you have left to lose?" He ran his hands through his hair, tugging hard as if he could rip the chaos out of his head. "You don't understand. I built my entire career on my reputation. If this sticks, I'm finished. And if I'm finished, you're finished too. You and the baby will have nothing." The audacity of it burned me. He had the gall to act as though my survival depended on him, when in reality, he had already chosen Anna over me. I had paid for the house with my own savings. I had carried our child through every sleepless night. And yet, here he was, still trying to chain me to his sinking ship. As he spiraled, the phone rang again. He lunged for it, but I was closer. I snatched it up before he could answer. Anna's name lit up the screen. Without hesitation, I pressed accept. "Enjoying the show?" she purred when she heard my voice. "You've ruined him," I said flatly. "No," she corrected, her tone dripping with satisfaction. "He ruined himself. I just made sure everyone else saw the truth. And don't worry, this is only the beginning." Before I could reply, she hung up, leaving the line dead and my blood ice cold. I turned to my husband, holding his phone out like evidence at a trial. "She's not going to stop. Don't you get it? She's not doing this because she loves you. She's doing this because she wants to see you burn. And she's succeeding." For a moment, the weight of my words seemed to land. His shoulders sagged, and he buried his face in his hands. But instead of remorse, what came next was rage. "This is your fault," he hissed through gritted teeth. "If you had stayed quiet, if you hadn't engaged with her, none of this would have happened. You've fed her, given her the attention she craves. You've made me weak in front of her." My stomach twisted, my grip tightening around the baby. He was unraveling, and in his desperation, he was rewriting history, painting me as the villain in his downfall. "No," I said firmly. "This is on you. You brought her into our lives. You let her into that hospital room. You betrayed me long before she ever posted those videos." He stood abruptly, towering over me, his eyes wild with fury. For the first time, I felt a flicker of fear, not just for myself, but for the child in my arms. In that moment, I understood something that cut deeper than any recording ever could. My husband wasn't just a liar or a cheater. He was a coward who would sacrifice anyone, his child, even his own dignity to protect himself, and Anna knew it. That was why she had him wrapped around her finger. That was why she was winning. But she didn't realize something either. She underestimated me, because as I stood there, clutching my baby against my chest, I made a silent vow. I wouldn't let either of them destroy me. This was no longer about heartbreak or humiliation. It was about survival. The next morning, I woke up with a strange, simmering calm. It wasn't peace, no, yet, but it was something sharper, steadier. For weeks, I had been stumbling, suffocating under betrayal and shame. But now, as I watched the sunlight pour across the crib where my baby slept, I realized I still had something worth fighting for. Not him, not us, but myself and my child's future. I brewed coffee and sat at the kitchen table, notebook open, pen in hand. For the first time since that hospital day, I began to make a plan. Step 1 was simple: distance. No more shouting matches, no more tearful pleas. The more he unraveled, the calmer I would remain. If he wanted chaos, I would give him silence. If he wanted control, I would give him walls. When he stumbled into the kitchen later, hair unkempt, eyes bloodshot, I didn't even look up from my notebook. "You're not even going to ask how I am?" he muttered. I sipped my coffee. "You'll tell me anyway." That threw him. He stood there, gaping, before finally spitting out, "My partners dropped me. They don't want the scandal attached to their name." "Anna," he broke off, jaw clenching. "What about Anna?" I asked flatly. She's demanding money. Says she deserves compensation for everything I promised her. She's threatening to release more recordings if I don't pay." The corner of my mouth twitched. So the mistress, who was supposed to be his salvation, was now holding him hostage. "I guess you chose well," I said softly, venom coating every word. He slammed his fist against the counter, making the baby stir in the other room. "Don't you dare mock me! You don't understand the pressure I'm under." "No," I said, my voice low but steady. "You don't understand the freedom I've just found." That afternoon, while he raged and spiraled, I made quiet phone calls to a lawyer, to a financial advisor, to a friend who had once told me about a women's support group. Each voice on the other end reminded me of one simple truth. I wasn't powerless. I still had options. The lawyer confirmed what I had long suspected. I had contributed to the mortgage. I had my name on joint accounts. And more importantly, I had evidence of his affair, his abandonment, and now his public humiliation of me. All of this could weigh heavily in custody battles, in property division, in every negotiation that lay ahead. For the first time in weeks, I felt the ground solid beneath me. That night, while he sulked on the couch, I packed a small bag, just essentials for me and the baby. "Where are you going?" he asked. his tone more wary than angry this time. "To breathe," I said simply. "Don't wait up. I didn't tell him where I went. I didn't owe him that." I drove to my friend Marissa's house, where she greeted me at the door with open arms and a look that said everything I needed to hear. "You're not alone." Over the next few days, the world outside only grew harsher for him. The scandal deepened as more of Anna's recordings dripped out this time, not just of whispered promises, but of financial discussions, shady deals, things that made him look not only unfaithful, but corrupt. His face was plastered across gossip blogs, news segments, even local radio shows dissecting the cheating husband scandal. And me? For once, I wasn't the punchline. In fact, some of the tide had turned. Strangers reached out, women who had been betrayed, mothers who had been humiliated, people who told me I was strong, that they were rooting for me. It didn't erase the pain, but it gave me fuel. Still, I knew the real showdown hadn't come yet, because while Anna was dismantling him publicly, I had something else in mind, something she couldn't touch. One evening, I returned to the house briefly, needing to collect a few more belongings. He was there, pacing, phone pressed to his ear, voice desperate. I could tell from his tone that he was talking to Anna, begging her, bargaining with her. When he noticed me, his expression shifted from panic to a kind of hollow relief. "You came back," he said, almost like a child clinging to a parent. "No," I corrected him, walking past to grab a box of clothes. "I came to get what's mine." He trailed after me, voice breaking. "She's ruining me. I need you to stand with me, just until this blows over. You and I can show everyone we're still a family. That's the only way I can recover." I turned slowly, looking him dead in the eye. "You think this is about recovery? About your reputation? I nearly died giving birth to our child, and you brought your mistress into that room. You humiliated me in front of nurses, in front of family, in front of the world, and now you want me to play house again so you can save face?" His lips trembled, but I didn't stop. "No, you made your choice when you walked into that hospital room holding her hand, and I'm making mine now. This is the end. For us, for this marriage, for your hold over me." He looked at me like he was staring into a mirror that finally told the truth, and in that moment, I saw something snap, not anger this time, but recognition. He finally realized he had lost me, but what he didn't realize yet was that he was about to lose much more, because I wasn't just leaving. I was preparing to fight back with everything I had. The day of reckoning didn't come with shouting or chaos. It came with papers, evidence, and a carefully orchestrated silence. 2 weeks after I left, I sat in my lawyer's office, signing the last of the documents that would change everything. Divorce proceedings were underway, custody arrangements were outlined, and financial protections were in place. My husband had always thought he held the power, but in the end, his arrogance had destroyed him. Because while he had been busy spiraling, arguing with Anna, chasing after lost business deals, and trying to salvage his shredded image, I had been quietly gathering everything I needed. Copies of the recordings Anna had leaked, screenshots of messages between them, testimonies from neighbors who had seen him parading her around while I was still in the hospital. Even statements from the hospital staff who had witnessed the scene in my recovery room. Every thread of betrayal was now woven into a net strong enough to trap him completely. When the official notice was delivered to him, divorce, custody demands, financial division, he stormed into Marissa's driveway like a man possessed. His once proud posture was gone. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes wild, his voice cracking as he shouted my name. I stepped outside, baby in my arms, Marissa at my side. "This is insane," he barked, waving the papers in the air. "You can't do this to me, to us. You're my wife." "No," I said, my voice calm, almost cold. "I was your wife until the day you replaced Maine, a hospital bed, no less." "This?" I gestured to the documents. "This is justice." He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "Anna's gone. She took everything and disappeared. I have nothing left. Don't do this, please." For a flicker of a second, I saw the man I had once loved. But then I remembered the hand he held when I was lying in pain, the smirk Anna wore as she stood beside him, the humiliation that burned through me as whispers spread around the hospital. "You made sure I had nothing too," I whispered back. "But you forgot one thing. I survived." The court case moved quickly, fueled by the tidal wave of evidence and the public scandal that refused to die down. Anna's recordings had already done most of the work, tarnishing his credibility beyond repair. Judges don't look kindly on men who parade mistresses in hospital maternity wards. In the final hearing, as the gavel struck, full custody was granted to me. Financial restitution was ordered in my favor, and my husband, the man who once thought he could replace me so easily, stood pale and broken. His empire crumbled, his mistress gone, his reputation beyond repair. But the final blow wasn't delivered by me. It came when Anna resurfaced, selling her story to a media outlet. She painted herself as the victim of his manipulation, spinning tales of promises he never kept, exposing financial misdeeds that reached far beyond our marriage. The headlines didn't just shame him, they buried him. He wasn't just the cheating husband anymore. He was branded a fraud, a liar, a man destroyed by his own hubris. And me? I chose silence. I didn't give interviews, didn't write statements, didn't add more fuel to the fire. Instead, I rebuilt my life quietly, focusing on my child, my healing, and the fragile but growing sense of peace that came with every new day. Months later, I stood in the park, watching my baby giggle in the sunlight. Marissa sat beside me, sipping coffee, and asked, "Do you ever regret it? Not fighting louder? Not taking the spotlight when you had the chance?" I shook my head. The truth was loud enough on its own. She smiled. "And him?" I looked at my child, at the innocence untouched by betrayal, and I answered simply, "He gave me freedom without even realizing it. That was his final gift. Because in the end, His betrayal had destroyed him, but it had freed me. I wasn't just the woman left in a hospital bed anymore. I was the woman who walked away, carrying not just my child, but my dignity, my strength, and the unshakable truth that no one and not a husband, not a mistress, not a scandal could ever take that from me again. And as the sun dipped low, casting gold across the horizon, I knew one thing for certain. This was not the end of my story. It was only the beginning.